Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for the CITI program webinar. Today's topic is Importance of Peer Review and Data Validation in Research, and it's presented by Dr. Adil Shamoo. This webinar will be recorded, and the recording will be available on the CITI program's website. Now, let me tell you about today's presenter, Dr. Adil Shamoo. Dr. Shamoo is a professor and former chair at the University of Maryland School of Medicine. Shamoo was a member of the National Human Research Protections Advisory Committee. He served on the Defense Health Board and served for 5 years as the chair of the Medical Ethics Subcommittee for the DHB. In 1988, he founded and is the editor-in-chief of the journal Accountability in Research. Dr. Shamoo has lectured over 320 times worldwide, and he has also written over 400 articles, books, and book chapters, including his textbook, Responsible Cognitive Research. He is also the founder and editor-in-chief, again, of the Accountability of Research Journal.
What we are going to discuss, to put it in a framework, what we are talking about, we're going to discuss what are the elements of peer review, what are the composition of peer review, basically, and describe the value of peer review. There was a value in it, that's why it was introduced. Then we will identify what is data validation. I don't know if you've heard, but recently there's been more in the media and leading journals talking about it. Then we will discuss the ethics of peer review versus data validation and how we go about it. And we will identify the differences between peer review and data validation. Okay, types of peer review. As I mentioned to you, government grants. Second is the journals, and that's the big bulk of peer review occur because that produces those 400,000 articles per year. Then promotion and tenure. And I put a red mark because that's the career of researchers and is not probably as value neutral in terms of promotion and tenure. I was the chairman of a department, so I'm familiar with the system. Is not as totally 100% dealing with issues of articles. There are other factors. And then there are other types like Bill Gates Foundation, other foundations, private money, etc. They do whatever they want, literally. And I was shocked. Some of them, they'll say, only bald-headed men, they could actually say that, can apply for this grant and get away with it. I have actually read, not that one, but they use religion, they use family, they use, you name it, and the law allows it. Criteria in evaluating the proposal, like I said, you'll see them here being repetitive here, significance, methodology. But if it is a grant proposal, okay, qualification of the PI, that's very important. I mean, you could have a brilliant idea if the PI cannot carry out the proposal for a year or two or three, obviously the grant proposal is not going to go to him. And does he have supporting data? This is a very contentious issue. Where would you get supported data if it's your first time trying to get the grant? It used to be, by the way, a requirement in my days, preliminary data. And if you don't have preliminary data, that almost kills the grant. They changed that, but in essence, really, they still require it. So most people take a little bit of what's money there is left from the old grant to make preliminary data. Well, that is also runs into the trouble of could be considered illegal because the grants are really given for what you said in that grant proposal. Anyway, it still is really not resolved. But however, now everybody muddles with it. Appropriateness of the budget request. Of course, the number of technicians you're asking, the number of papers you'll publish and fees for them, the salary, are they giving you 10% or 90% of the salaries? And what are you going to do? How are you going to disseminate the results? Most of them will say we'll publish 2 or 3 papers. And are you complying with federal regulation? Variety is not just issues of integrity. Ethical guidelines in peer review. This was produced by COPE in 2013. This is COPE is Committee on Ethics publication. These are publishers. And they're very obvious. Others have written those things, including my textbook, way before 2013. We said all these things. They're obvious to anybody really in bioethics. Issues of confidentiality. Do they go around in a Christmas party and they say, hey, I just turned down this paper, it was lousy, or I just turned down this grant, or I got him good rating. There are such a breach of confidentiality. And respect of intellectual property. Can you get an idea from there and go do it quickly. Disclosing possible conflict of interest. Not everybody disclose conflict of interest. I wrote an editorial in my journal saying, the primary goal of validation is to examine, and I quote, the degree of correspondence between assertions of published data with the original data. Validation is based upon comparing statistically valid sample of the data to the final data. That's what data audit, independent data audit. And humbly, I tell you what I did. Shamoo and Anau in 1987 in Nature, it is necessary to establish data auditing procedures that will ensure that fraudulent practices are minimized and revealed early. So what I advocate now is that the high impact research published, the high impact, the high visibility, there should be an independent audit of that data, because you don't want to wait until reproducibility. That is really disaster, because as you all know, reproducibility of a huge study with 10,000 patients, etc., or 5,000 or 1,000, at a minimum will take a few years. At the maximum, some of them wait 10 years to find out, and some of them never get audited in any shape or form. Reproduce any shape or form. So if there is something where eventually is a development of a drug to give it to tens of millions of people, wouldn't be worth it 1% of the cost of that drug trial to be audited by an independent group. And the fact that we published that, by the way, that's when I started the journal, Accountability and Research.
The first question was related to when you were speaking to evaluation of submissions, and the question was if you had mentioned evaluating the qualifications of the PI, and the question was, what if the PI leaves the institution and the research remains with the co-PI who now becomes the PI? Do you have any thoughts in terms of their, I presume, their experience and assessing that?
Yeah, I think, you see, I think the university owns the data. That used to be a question about that. And NIH solved that in 1986, 87, passed a law saying the university own it and the patent are owned by the university, but we recommend that the university share it with their researchers who invented the patent. Anyway, so if he leaves and the co-PI took over, first, the PI, even if there is no co-PI to stay behind, the university has the right to have total access to that data. He shouldn't remove the original copy and leave nothing, because again, they own it. That's the clear. It used to be not clear. To me, it was clear because I wrote a paper like, I don't know, 20, 30 years ago. There was a national meeting of American Heart Association, and they requested me to do research on this topic and give a talk. And I obliged. And even then was very known that the data are owned and the equipment are owned by the university.
We encourage you to monitor the CITI program website for additional information about future webinars, available on-demand recordings of past webinars, and our new all-access webinar package.